I've heard of a place out here where I live. It's on one of the back roads of the Alaskan new-growth forests in a valley. They say that if you drive down this road on a day when the sun is shining so brightly as to make everything appear black and white, then you might come across a girl walking along the side of the road. She is said to be easy to recognize because, whether it is summer or winter, she's always wearing a heavy wool overcoat and a set of oversized headphones like those big skull candy headphones you can find in stores. According to the story, if you drive up alongside her and roll down the window, you might hear her singing. The song some people around here say is Rezo Cereza's Gloomy Sunday. If you interrupt her, asking a question before she's finished the song, it's said that her answer will be,
I can't remember.
And in the next town you enter, you will be arrested for the kidnapping and murder of this girl. However, if you were to wait for her to finish and then ask a question being, when did it last snow? And this is to be asked no matter what season it is, she will give you one of 3 possible answers. If she says Thursday, you'll continue on to drive ahead as if nothing happened. And though you will be able to see and control your actions, it will be through a thick fog as if you were asleep. You will live out the rest of your life in this empty dream state, and when you die, your soul will be condemned to a black emptiness. If her answer is today, then you are far more fortunate. You'll continue on to your destination without event, and upon returning home, you'll find that your greatest wish has been realized. However, if her answer is last Friday, then may whatever entity controls our fates have mercy on you. You will vanish for over a year, and no one will have the slightest clue where you've gone, and your family, in despair, will give you up for dead. And then, on a Friday, during the following year's snowmelt, your body will be found hanging from an all-black spruce in one of these swamps. Your face will have been eaten away, and your body in such a state of decay that you'll only be identified by your dental records. Your spirit, however, will be trapped, forced to walk that road every day when the sun is so bright that everything seems black and white. How do I know this? I've never done this myself, only heard the stories. But I have lived off here for most of my life, so I can tell you this honestly. 6 years ago, this entity was a little boy. Then they found my sister. I've always had an innate fear of the night. As a child, my imagination was overcome with horror stories that leave me in fright. But inside the house, with a steady glow, I felt a calm that the dark could not overthrow. I never had a reason for this fear to grow, until one night, not too long ago, a colleague and I caught a late baseball game. I dropped him off home and drove back the same. Everything was fine on my way back home, till I reached a light near my street, alone. It was one of those lights that felt all wrong, ones that stay on red for way too long. Of course, as I pulled up right on cue, the light turned red, like it always knew. Late at night, I hit a red light's glare, alone in my car, with nobody there. Or so I thought. I glanced at the window to my left. Just ever so slightly out of sight, I notice a woman sitting on a bench, all alone in the cold, quiet night. We made brief eye contact, and I quickly looked away, but it was too late. I could see movement, and I knew she was coming my way. She was carrying a bag. She looked young but frail. She had spindly thin fingers, and her skin was deathly pale. As she stepped closer, I looked around my car to make sure all the doors were shut, locked and tight, and that all the windows were rolled upright. Before I even knew it, she was already at my door. She was so close, she could not have moved closer anymore. Perhaps she just needs help, I thought. But something wasn't right. I don't know why, but my instincts told me to run and hide, and then she uttered something. She said,
My boyfriend beat me up. Can you give me a ride?
But there was something about the way she spoke. It was so flat, so practiced, like a worn-out joke. She was detached from the moment. Her words felt cold, like lines repeated, rehearsed, and told. And after a pause, just a second or two, I told her, I'm sorry, but I can't. I have things to do. After my refusal, she leaned in closer to the door and asked a few times more. I kept telling her I'm sorry, no, and that I really had to go. But she kept asking the same thing again and again in repeat, showing no sign of retreat.
My boyfriend beat me. Can you give me a ride?
Then she started tugging on the door handle, trying to get inside. She pressed her bag against the car window, and I got hit with a rotting, corpse-like stench I couldn't bear to swallow. I glanced back at the lady while covering my mouth tight. She had a wide, contorted smile on her face, reflecting in the streetlight. I've had enough. As I was driving away, the woman uttered something once more. In a soft but graggly voice, she said,
You made the right choice.
I floored the pedal and drove away, gagging from the rotting scent of decay. I looked at the rearview mirror and saw the light still red. Then I noticed something that filled me with dread. On the car window, where the woman pressed her bag, it was blood, dripping down the glass. I drove home, constantly looking at the mirrors, paranoid and frozen with fright. I reached home and ran inside to escape the darkness of the night. I was restless. I cleaned the blood off my car. And that night, I heard something that left me traumatized and scarred.
A young man was found decapitated inside his car while at a traffic light earlier this evening. The head of the victim was nowhere to be found in the crime scene, and the police are doing everything they can to identify the victim.
was 17 when she came. I'd been living with my abusive mother for 17 long, painful years. It was around midnight, and my mother was already asleep. So when the 3 soft raps at the front door came, it was me who answered. An odd-looking little girl stood there, with cheeks pale and colorless, blonde hair and braided pigtails, pink dress torn a little at the hem, feet bare and turning slightly blue from the cold of the winter, and black eyes, fathomless, deep black eyes. I quickly let her in, thinking of how horridly underdressed she was. It wasn't until later I'd wonder why she had not been shivering, or even question as to why she was here in the first place. I got her into the living room, wrapping her little form in a thick afghan my grandmother knitted. She held it, though it didn't seem to affect her, and I smiled. "What's your name, darling?" A long silence passed, in which she stared at me. I was beginning to be discomforted by her black gaze when she parted her lips and spoke in a soft voice.
Lacy Morgan,
she said. I nodded, smiling again. "You can stay here tonight, Lacy," I said, motioning to the couch. She curled up in a little ball, black eyes still on me, and I exited the room. That night, I slept soundly. I felt safe, not worrying about my mother beating me or the strange little girl on the couch. When morning came and I walked into the kitchen, I was greeted with a coffee mug to the shoulder. I gave a feeble shout of pain, staring at my mother.
What the hell did you do? Why is there dirt on the couch?
She shouted, confusing me greatly. Upon investigating, I found that Lacy had vanished, the only proof she had been there being some dirt that must have fallen off her dress or feet. I took responsibility, earning myself a strong hit to the cheek, then left for school. That day, I overheard some students muttering something to each other. A little girl was found dead last night. It was heartbreaking to hear, but then I had a thought that sent chills down my spine. I passed the day waiting for any more news on the subject, but found none. I ran home and saw that the news was broadcasting a live report about it. And there she was, Lacy Morgan, 6 years of age, reported dead at 7 last night. Her body was located in the backyard,
buried in the snow, and died of hypothermia. So far, there had been no sign of her mother, Lacy Morgan, who was suspected to be the killer. Marisa has reportedly abused Lacy on multiple accounts, and may be responsible
for her death. Suddenly, a picture of Lacy appeared on the screen. She appeared very close to how she had been when I met her. Blonde hair and braids, pink dress, pale face. Only her cheeks had color, and her eyes were baby blue. She died before arriving at my house. If what the newscaster said was true, She died hours before. I tried to play it off, going about my business. I went to bed early so as to not have to see my mother. It was around midnight when I awoke to cool fingers stroking the bruise on my cheek. I sighed, leading into the small hand. "Never again," Lacy whispered, before her hand pulled away and vanished. A few hours later, I woke up to my mother screaming. I rushed into her bedroom, nearly fainting at what I saw. My mother was thrashing wildly on her bed, a small creature having buried its face into her neck. I could hear the sound of flesh tearing and my mother screaming increasing in volume. I wished I hadn't gotten up. Later on, I'd tell myself I hadn't, but I had. So when Lacy pulled back from the gaping hole in my mother's throat, I had a plain view of her razor-sharp teeth glinting in the light, glinting with my mother's blood. She smiled innocently at me for a moment, before swiftly tearing out my mother's jugular. At that time, I did faint. When I came to, I was on my bed. Slowly, I walked into my mom's room, expecting to see the floor covered in blood and my mother's body on the floor. Upon peering around the doorframe, I found the room empty. The bed made neatly, as if my mom had left for work early. The only oddities were the dirty child's footprints and the open window, showing that Lacy had in fact visited. I wasn't sure what happened that night. I never saw my mother again, and I never missed her either. Eventually, I got married and had a child. I named her Lacy. Recently, I noticed the neighbor's daughter has all sorts of scrapes and bruises on her arms. I've started watching their home, and the other day I noticed something odd. A little girl running barefoot through their backyard, up to their back door. It was around midnight, so I couldn't be for sure. But I knew she met my eyes with her black ones. And I could swear she mouthed 2 words at me. Never again.